Good evening, and welcome to the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre page, and it's Paranormal Peeps with Wayne Seaton. So
Good
how are
evening.
you tonight, Wayne?
Not too bad. Quite tired, but I'm okay, thanks.
You've been busy then?
Very. A lot of household decorating and renovating and selling books.
Yeah. Wow. And you've got two books which you've done already, which is amazing, because a lot of people want to write
Yeah.
books, but you've actually published them, and that makes a
Yes.
difference.
Um, I've been writing short stories for about 6 years. Um, I was quite good at writing poems and short stories when I was in primary school, and my mum had always pressured me into sort of doing something with them, and I just ignored it. And it wasn't until sort of more recently that I thought now's about time I started pushing them out there a little bit more.
Wow.
A lot of people were enjoying them when I was on a certain group's page and I was writing the stories and broadcasting them. So I thought now was the time to start putting them out there.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm just trying to find the live. Yeah, it's actually just come up. That's great. Can actually read comments. So I just want to welcome everyone who's watching. I haven't seen any. Hi, Nick Millay. Nick was actually a guest the other week. It's great speaking to Nick. He's been doing paranormal for quite a few years. So where did you start off in paranormal then, Wayne?
Um, I'd always been into the paranormal since about the age of 6. Shortly after my grandfather was killed, for about 6 months, I was always sort of adamant that he was coming to my room at night and visiting me. And I was very close to my grandfather. He taught me how to read before I even started school. So I had an incredible bond with my grandfather. Um, and sort of ever since then, I sort of turned my back on mainstream religion and sort of found more of a free spirited approach to faith and what happens after we die. Um, and so, sort of, my interest in the paranormal started from then onwards, and I would watch documentaries and things about ghosts and UFOs, cryptozoology. So I sort of the interest continued throughout the years. So at the moment, it's standing at my 40th year.
Wow, that's impressive. Because a lot of like left paranormal till later on. So do you actually pick up on spirit?
I get feelings. Um,
Right. Okay.
I wouldn't pinpoint the fact that I pick up on spirit. I can go to a place and I can feel uneasy. Um, and 9 times out of 10, if I start getting headaches in the back of my head, just above where spine meets my skull,
Right.
if I get a headache there, something's not right. Whenever I normally have a headache, it's always at the front of my head, a normal sort of
Yeah.
headache.
Okay.
If something is haunted and something is there in a location that we go to, I usually get warning in the back of my head. Um, there is another little tale um, which has sort of enabled me to actually enhance on what I feel when I go into a location. When um, I was about 5 years after I left the Royal Air Force. I was living at my parents' house. My sister's house became available for me to move into. And so in 2000, I moved into a house and strange things kept happening. Things would move from one part of the house to another. And I had a lodger move in, and she wasn't too keen on me watching things about the paranormal,
Okay.
especially most haunted. She didn't believe in ghosts. And for some unknown reason, I turned around to her and said, you don't want to upset the ghosts because they'll make you pay for it. And she said, oh, I don't believe in all of that. And she opened up the cupboard and I heard a scream from the kitchen. And when I ran into the kitchen, she's standing there, white as anything, and this can of spaghetti was sitting on the floor. And I
Okay.
said, what's the matter with you? She said, oh, this can of spaghetti's just flown at me.
Right,
Only
okay.
when she actually described it, it came out of the cupboard and went 15 foot across the kitchen and hit the wall at exactly the same point that it came
Oh,
out of the cupboard. And as we know, gravity dictates. Of course, the scientific approach sort of kicked in. You've got
yeah,
to throw it really, really hard for it to have stayed
kept
at
that far.
that height. And she just poo-pooed the idea and ignored it and carried on. And about 6 weeks later, she did the same thing again. And she had brought a Chinese meal and divided it into two halves, one to half to eat the following day.
Hmm.
She put it in the fridge, tub of sweet and sour sauce on the top, and she proceeded to badmouth ghosts again. Well, by this time, I had the sneaky suspicion we had someone called Joanne at the property. And I turned around to her and said, be careful, because Joanne's listening. And I'd already got the warning of the headache in the back of my head, so I knew she was around. And she went, oh, I don't believe in all that rubbish. Next minute we know, she screams again. I've run into the kitchen. The plate of Chinese is on the floor. The plate is broken. And I said, what have you done? She said, I know, I'm in the fridge and the plate of dinner has just come flying at me. When I
Blimey.
looked at the fridge, the tub of sweet and sour sauce that she'd put on top of the plate was still sitting in the fridge and she hadn't touched it. She lasted 2 months after that and she left.
Okay, so did she
She,
believe in the end then?
she does believe in ghosts now.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
but I since then, as a result of that and a couple of other lodgers saying that they'd seen something in the house, I contacted a medium nearby. And she'd wanted no information about who I was or where I lived. I had to meet her in a neutral place and walk her to the house. And within 5 minutes of walking through the back door, she had the name Joanne Bloomfield.
Wow.
And I was gobsmacked because I'd already got the name Joanne, but hadn't got the full name. She was only in for about 25 minutes. But by the time she left, I had a clear rundown of who she was and who I was in
That's
relation to her. And after checking on the Hall of Records in Chelmsford, it turned out that this lady was 100% accurate in what she was saying. Joanne lived there with her husband, Michael, who had died in Dunkirk
gosh.
on the evacuation of the beaches. The reason why she was there at the house was because she was waiting for her husband to return.
Oh, that's so sad.
And her husband turned out to be me.
Oh,
And
wow.
she wanted me to go and have past life regression done to sort of try and get me to believe and confirm that that was the situation. But I couldn't do it because I believe that the reason why Joanne was active was because I'd returned.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
it was really, really strange. But when I checked on the Hall of Records, she was there, her husband Michael was there. He died in Dunkirk on the evacuation of the beaches. And it just seemed to sort of coincide with everything that was going on. It also confirmed with me why I have a thing about World War Two.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, A Whistle from the Hills is about what happened, something that happened in World War Two. There are a few of my spooky stories that are based in World War Two, and so of course the connection was there. And every time I've moved, Joanna's come with me.
Oh, that's awesome. So she's with
So
you
I
now
feel,
then?
yeah, so I feel that there is the connection there.
That's absolutely amazing. I'll
The,
just say hi to Tina Howard, Jane Rowley, Peter Ling, Calvin Davis, Andrea Lee Law. Thanks everyone for watching. Calvin Davis says, wow, that's amazing, Wayne. So when you've been out investigating, what's been your favourite location?
at the moment, Harrods Redoubt Fort in Essex,
Right, okay.
um, by far has been the most outstanding place I've ever investigated. I've been there about 8 times now. And every time I go there, something different always happens.
That's fantastic. So,
Um, the worst thing, um, which was quite unnerving at the time, was a mannequin dummy was thrown at me.
wow.
This was witnessed by another paranormal investigator who has since quit the paranormal
Okay.
because of that one experience.
Oh,
Me, I thought it was hilarious. I was laughing. I was playing football with a head, trying to stop this head from rolling across the floor. Um, but we'd set up a trigger object test in one of the cells in the fort, and each of the cells there is all set up as it was during World War II, which it was alleged that downed German pilots or lads that had been naughty had been put while they were waiting to be sentenced and sent off to POW camps or their
okay.
own places. And so they had everything all set up there, and in each cell they had a mannequin dummy dressed up in uniform. And we'd got a trigger object on the bed, which was one of those little, like a boxing ring with the red lights on it. And
All
then you
right.
had a little ball that you put in the center and you set the alarm. So we'd activated this and we started calling out saying, if there are any spirits in the cell, please could you come forward? And I'm watching, and all you could see was these little red lights flashing. And out of nowhere, Claire, the other investigator, she turned around and she said, something's that mannequin's moving. So I'm looking at it and I'm straining to see this mannequin, but I couldn't see it moving. And I said to her, I said, no, it's not moving, but something's going to happen. I can feel the energy building. And as I said that, the mannequin came hurtling towards me from the other side of the room.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've gone, oh my God, and grabbed it, caught it. The head's fallen off. And poor Claire turned around and she went, oh, no, I'm not here for that, in not so many polite words. And shot out of the cell and left me on my own.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, oh, right, okay. Well, luckily for me, there was another team in the third cell along, and they were doing dowsing rods. And they were actually recording what they were doing. And you could clearly hear Claire scream as they were asking for anything to happen. Can they cross the rods over? And as the rods crossed over, you hear her scream and run off out. And they turn around and go, oh, what's going on? What's going on? Just to see her running out the end of the corridor. It was
Wow.
amazing.
That's absolutely awesome. I don't know how I'd
I
do
mean,
with it.
at the moment, that to me has been the most active place I've been to.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've never been to that location because it is a long way south from where I am because
Yeah,
I'm actually in the Midlands, but oh, it sounds awesome. You've been to
it
Rougham
is
as well,
nice. I
haven't
mean,
you?
sorry.
You've been to Rougham as well, which got Mark
Um,
Dudley watching. He's there a lot.
yeah, well, Rougham for me. I mean, we're going to be at Rougham on Saturday, because I also present an online show on Facebook and YouTube called Truth Beyond Paranormal. And we're actually going to Rougham for me, it's the first time I've ever been there.
All right. Okay.
And as a coach driver, I've driven past it so many times, and I've never actually been in. So next week is going to be the first time I've actually been to this location, and I've heard so many good things about it. So I'm quite excited to get in there.
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot about it because obviously I know somebody who goes quite a lot and works there. Hi, Von. Thanks for watching. We've got Mark Dudley, Annalise Wire. Thanks for watching. If anyone's got any questions, if you add it to the chat, please. So, when you investigate, what is your style of investigation? So,
Um,
before you're setting out, how do you set out? Start.
well,
Sorry.
I mean, basically, we leave it up to the guests. If they want to use technology, we have technology there.
Right.
I
Okay.
personally prefer as little technology as possible, more the traditional back to basics way of investigating, just calling out, using your own eyes and ears, maybe having a video camera with you to actually record anything, and then maybe going into things like dowsing rods, and just that's it. I'm not too keen on things like EMF meters, K2 meters. things like that, I seem to think that a K2 meter has been there and been made to actually create money for the person that's selling them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I proved it as a point to somebody. They were paying £40 for a K2 meter, and I went and brought an electrician's EMF meter for £11.
Yeah, I would have
Did
done
the
that
same
if
job.
I'd known how. Yeah, I got mine as a gift, but I have had good results with them. But
yeah,
I like the back to basics idea. Like I did go to Haunted Antiques recently, and we didn't use anything, just ourselves, and that was absolutely awesome.
And I think that when you've got, if you're doing an event with guests, the guests will have their own ideas of what they want to do. So some of them will want to use, would say to you, have you got a Connect camera? Or have you got these REM pods, and have you got this, and have you got that? And we're like, well, we do have these things, but if you would rather you went to back to basics and used the normal sort of traditional methods, then we would rather that, because that enhances your experience. If you stand there relying on technology, you're going to be sitting behind a screen all the time, and you're not necessarily going to experience what everybody else is.
Yeah, that's it, because you're just focusing on a different thing, aren't you, really?
Yeah. So we do give them the choice.
Just want to say hi to Jeremy Daniel and Diane Elizabeth Cooper. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hi, Sarah Edwards. Excuse my croaky voice. There was a question. Let's see this one then. So, what do you think this pandemic is doing to the spirit world?
Increasing it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think the only thing that COVID-19 is doing is restricting the amount of investigations there are. A lot of people, or a lot of groups, I should say, are cancelling events and postponing events simply because, they're under the impression that they can't do it. But you can, providing you've limited the numbers and you have the bubbles.
Yeah, that's it.
If the bubbles are there, it's not.
Well, as of today, that is, but we don't quite know what's happening moving forwards.
Yeah, so I mean,
day, isn't it?
yeah. So I mean, at the moment, it's a strange one, but I personally, my own personal opinion, that I think we've still got more deaths from the flu than we have from COVID-19, and that is fact. It is a clear fact that the more people have died of flu than COVID. So I think it's more how it's going about across media, and the problem we've had is that with social media, you get one person will say one thing, one person will say another, and then you'll create factions of people that will believe one thing, and they'll be against the people that have believed the other story. And then as a result, everybody's getting caught in between. And I think as a result, I don't think, technically, I don't think it's going to cause it. If we were allowed to just go off out with large groups of people into locations, I don't think it's really going to make much of a difference, apart from the fact that when anybody speaks, you're not going to hear much because you've got to wear masks.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Like, even when I go and pay for petrol, like,
yeah,
sort of can't tell, well, especially now I've got a cold, but, well, I hope it's cold. Like, you check the symptoms out, don't you? And, like, they're the same as what it is for COVID. And, like, well, what's the difference? You don't know. So,
and I must admit, though, it is awkward because obviously, with the event that I'm doing on Saturday, we're lucky that the numbers that we've got are very small, and they're all from one household. So
okay.
all of the groups we've got are all bubbles of people that have been meeting each other anyway because they're in the same house. So all those bubbles are all going to be going in 4 different locations, and they're all going to be given times with the team member who is going to be social distancing from the group. He will just go in and say, right, there's the equipment, you do your investigation, and then I will come and tell you when it's time to come back.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Each of the 4 groups is managed well.
Yeah, that's what I do because I think I'm a person's nightmare because I go on my own to events. So, the bubble of one, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean, of course, we've all got to go by social distancing.
Yeah,
So when you've been fortunate enough to get groups of people that book in groups, as they have, so when you've got 5 people have turned around and said, "Well, we would like to come to your event," you say that's fine because we can put you in this bubble. The team member that will go with you will social distance. He will take you to the area, leave you there for X amount of time, and we'll come back and pick you up and tell you what time it's okay to come back to the hub. In the meantime, another team would have been back at the hub, had their little break, and then gone off to the location that they've just come from.
yeah.
So no one actually crosses paths. No one's getting too close to each other, and it all works out quite sort of fluid.
That's brilliant. It's just the snacks and drinks as well. You've got to be like wary of, isn't it?
Yeah. Disposable cups or bring your own mugs.
Yeah, that's a good one because I have been on an event and the people were like passing you the biscuits. They've got sanitized hands. You
Yeah.
couldn't help yourself to everything in packets. They're
We could
making the
just
drink for you.
just spray everything with Dettol,
Yeah, Dettol
including the
clean
biscuits.
biscuit. Yeah, lovely. So, how long have you been writing then? In all,
Um, I think in all, I started writing poems and short stories when I was in primary school. So I would say from about probably about the age of 9. So you're looking about 35 years,
wow.
35, 36 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. But it was always silly little things like little poems or nonsensical, um, little stories that really sort of never really meant anything, and they were just silly little things. And I pushed them to one side. Um, and my second book, Lady J, um, was actually written in 1998.
Wow.
And I wrote it on my mum and dad's old typewriter. Um,
Oh, wow.
and before I started to publish them, what I was doing was I was on my Facebook group, and I was actually reading them live. Before, when I was the admin of the Most Haunted Facebook group, I used to write my stories. I used to record me reading them, and then I used to post the stories on the group. So this time round, I was actually doing them live on my own group. But when it came to actually publishing Lady J, I changed it. I had to alter it because I looked back at what I was reading on the live feed, and I didn't like it.
Okay.
So I went back into the story and I changed it. So people that have been on the group and listened to Lady J being read are actually going to get a different Lady J than what's in the book.
Wow. That's cool. An extra
So
surprise then. That's good.
yeah, it is because there was parts in the original Lady J that I wasn't. I had actually written it as if I was actually typing it out there and then on location. And when I read back through it, I'm thinking I don't really like this, so I took it out. And then I realised that about 20 pages along, it came in again that I was on this laptop writing this thing. So I'm like, I've now got to remove that. But then if I take that out, I'm going to actually shorten the story quite a bit. So I'm going to
Oh,
have to add something instead. Um, and so now, as a result, another short story has been born that's completely different to the original. But I'm more proud of that now than I was when I first wrote it.
that's fantastic. Have you got a short story you can read for us then?
Um,
Short
well, I've
extract.
I've got both. I've got both copies of my books here. I've got my a whistle. Oh, there goes my camera. A whistle from the hill there,
We will put a link to these later on as well. So I'll make sure
and
to
this
link
one.
if you're interested in buying them.
This one is Lady J, um, which the covers were designed by myself as well because I had to. The difficulty was actually getting someone to publish the books. and most of publishers will not touch you unless you have an agent.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So after speaking to somebody that writes, as well, has now got a publisher, she started with Amazon Kindle herself, and she said, to be honest, that is the best way to go. Start off on Amazon and work up from there. She was then spotted by a publisher, and the publisher now sells her books in WH Smith and Watergates, or Waterstones even. So I've taken her advice and gone down that road. See if I can find. Yes, I've got a little excerpt towards the end of A Whistle from the Hills.
Brilliant.
So I can embarrass myself now and do another live reading.
Yeah, Sarah Wayne is outside.
Yeah, it's starting to get a bit dark out here. Okay. Neither of them had noticed that the birds had started singing again, but they seemed to be singing in unison. No other sounds could be heard apart from them. Neither did they notice the skeletal remains of an arm reaching out from underneath a pile of rubble. It was outreached as if in desperate bid for life, reaching out in the darkness before he was taken by the darkness itself. They scrambled down the rubble onto the cave floor. Costa walked over to the rifle and shone the torch onto it. "Come, look at this, Jim," he yelled. Jim ran over and stood beside him. Costa was dusting the rifle down. Next to it, scratched into the cave floor, was an arrow pointing to the entrance. Costa picked up the rifle and stood up straight next to Jim. "What does it mean?" "It's pointing to the outside." Costa points the torch to the arrow and follows the direction it's pointing. Jim takes a deep breath as the light hits the base of the arm poking out from the rubble. The others must have marked it, so if anyone comes to search for them, he will be found. They both scrambled over and started to remove the rocks and dirt from around the body.
So if you want to hear any more, then buy the book.
Indeed.
That's really cool. I like that.
Like I said earlier, this story was generated originally. It was going to be based in Corfu as my second home. But when I looked into, because obviously with all of my books, I always do a bit of research on the history that I'm going to use within the book, and I couldn't really find much that sort of intrigued me with the story that I was going to write. So I ended up having to write the book based in Crete instead.
Okay. So
and it's not the mythological side of Crete with the Minotaur or the labyrinth. It was based in World War II during the German invasion of Crete.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So which of the books is it again? Just for everybody watching.
That one was A Whistle from the Hill, or A Whistle from the Hills. Yeah.
Okay, so I will post a link later on anyway.
Okay.
So you can find it. Hi, Patrick, Patricia, Gerald Freeman. I'll learn your name one day. Oh, Annalise said her ancestor died in the First World War. If anyone's got any questions for Wayne, that would be amazing. I had a question about rogue investigators. Have you ever had problems with people in your group?
The only times I've experienced any problems with people within the groups, team members, I've never had problem. Well, I have had a problem with one or two team members that have decided they want to do their own thing and then leave me high and dry and claim that there's a tax bill and things like that, which I then put my business head on and look into these things and find that's not the case whatsoever. So I just distance myself from them pretty quickly. I've experienced guests that have actually tried to pull the wool over other guests' eyes and our own eyes, and I've called them out straight away. Is one thing I cannot stand is when you advise people on how to do things or the proper way to do things, and and then they try to deceive the other guests while you're out on an event, and it's something that, to me, it spoils the whole evening for everybody involved. And I think the biggest one is things like Ouija boards.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, when we say to people, you need to put your finger on the Ouija, on the planchette, like it's like you're playing a piano. Have your finger just briefly dangling on the top of the planchette. And the amount of times when we've seen people pressing down like that, and you can see their knuckles going white because they're putting so much pressure onto it. And we're like, no, you can't do that. You have to do it so that you can't really put too much weight on there without being obvious. And then when all of a sudden, when they do that, everything stops.
Yeah.
You know, the planchette stops moving, and you're like, we've caught you out. And I know on a couple of public events that I've done in the past with Most Haunted, we've had a couple that have always made contact with their Uncle Steve, and they kept asking the same questions. It didn't matter what location they went to. They were still asking the same questions because they were on the understanding that it was different guests all the time. But the problem was they'd done it so many times, they'd forgotten what guests they'd met before. So we did an event at Preston Manor, and they went, "Hello, is that Uncle Steve?" "Oh, was Uncle? Oh, Uncle Steve, you've come through. Do you reckon that me and Maria should get married?"
Oh no!
And one of the guests turned around to us afterwards and said, "He did that the last one." I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "We went to Shepton Mallet and they were there, and they did the same thing there with the Ouija board, and they asked the same questions, the same answers. Everything was all the same." And they'd done it about 6 different investigations.
Yeah, what is the point? And also, on an investigation, you don't always want Great Auntie Doris coming out or something like that, do you?
No.
You want to know about people at the location rather than, you know, admittedly, I've taken my parents to an event, which is quite embarrassing, but yeah.
my parents wouldn't go on an event with me. They're yeah.
They were in spirit, so they actually, I think they're in the car, and I took them, and I was in a cinema sitting in an auditorium, and the medium actually picked up that was sitting alongside me. I missed some info. It's like, no, what are you doing here? You know, can't even go to a ghost hunt without taking your family. You know, it's quite amazing. Oh, I've got from Diane then, the spirit of her late granddad used to talk to me when she was little, and she's seen her dad 3 times. That's so lovely, that is.
Yeah, and this is very similar thing to what I experienced when my granddad was killed. He worked in a shipyard, and it was his job to check the steel that they were using at the end of every shift. And as he was checking these big sheets, they all collapsed on him. And no one found him until I think about 6 hours later. And by then it was too late. He'd gone. And it almost killed me because I was closer to my granddad than I was to even my mum and my dad. And so to have him go really took it out of me. And a lot of people said, it's because you miss him so much that you think you can see him.
Oh, gosh.
And I wanted to not believe what people were saying. You know, I didn't want to believe that that was the case. I wanted to believe he was visiting because all I could see was a silhouette. But I knew it was my granddad because he had big ears. And like me, he's got a big nose. So I knew it was him. But people were saying it's because you miss him so much, your brain is actually getting the image that he's in your room because it's dark. And that's when obviously science comes into play, that when it's dark, your eyes can't see everything. So your brain fills in the blanks. And I'm like, yeah, there is that theory. But for my mind to actually fill in the blanks with my granddad standing there, that's a different thing. And this went on for about 6 months. And I think after 5, I'd gone downstairs one morning and my mum was in the living room and she was crying. And I said, "What's the matter with you?" She said, "I found out who you were talking to last night."
Oh, wow.
And I went, "Go on." She said, "You were talking to your granddad." Apparently, I was having full-blown conversations with my grandfather. Um, and of course, this sort of linked then onto a child psychologist. And
Right.
let there be light. And the child psychologist said the thing is when a child has an imaginary friend, the conversations of the subjects are short and sweet. You know, it would be one question, one answer, then a completely different question not related to the first one, and then an answer, and it would go on like that. She said, but the problem is, I was having a full blown conversation, and the subject matter would last for minutes, and it would be question after question after question related to that one first question. So I was having a full blown conversation with someone in my bedroom,
Wow.
and I'm
Yeah,
like, I wasn't, I wasn't honest. Um, but then it stopped. And I think it was because my granddad was just making sure that I was going to be okay. And I
oh,
think
that's
once he was happy that, because our family were going through a really bad patch with my mum and dad divorcing and things happening at the time. Um, and I think my granddad was just returning just to make sure that I was going to be okay. And soon as he
oh,
was happy with knowing that I was okay, he then left us again.
oh, bless you. That's amazing. Yeah, because they do say now more than ever that if
But
children do have imaginary friends, then it's more of a thinking that it is spirit, isn't it?
yeah, it's, the problem is when people, and I notice it, you know, it's so much where people turn around and say, "Oh, well, I've seen so and so, I've seen my family member," and they don't, you know, a lot of people will just sort of go down the road and say, "No, you didn't. You're talking rubbish. You don't believe in all that sort of thing. You can't do that." And I'm like, "Well, yes, you can, because it's your own personal belief system. If you believe that something is there, you're open-minded enough for the spirit side to come through to you, then you will have that experience. But if you close yourself off from it all, you're never going to have that experience."
Yeah, that's the thing
And
about paranormal. If you've experienced it, you know it exists.
yeah,
If you haven't, you can just say, no, ghosts don't exist, and that's that.
yeah.
But
And
once you've
people
seen,
have said to me countless times, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And I say, "Look, I've seen and heard too much not to believe in them.
yeah, that's right.
I can only but believe in ghosts because I've experienced and seen too much in my own personal experiences, not just on events that would sort of blow people out the water with what I've seen." But the problem is sometimes the things that happen you can't prove because you're on your own. You can't
Yeah,
prove because you haven't got a video camera with you. So you couldn't turn around and say, "I had a black silhouette ran straight past me across a doorway," because I didn't conveniently have my camera on at the time. It's your word against theirs.
yeah.
So you have to leave it down to your own personal belief on whether that was what you saw.
I think that's the thing about it, though, isn't it? A lot of it is about stories and stories from the storyteller. And it's
Yeah,
like whether you believe the person who's sort of giving the account or not.
yeah. And I think that's why I found it so easy to actually put pen to paper and create my own stories, simply because my own personal experience, you know, to when you actually mention what's happened to you on an event, and people go, "Oh no, that nah, I don't believe that." You can then turn around and go, "Well, hang on a minute, I've written this." And that could be based on what you've experienced. But a lot of people that would read it would go, "Actually, that does make sense." So
Yeah,
it can turn a full circle quite easily. And it's made my imagination has sort of been boosted by doing paranormal events and doing all the investigating that I've done. Um, and it's allowed me to do this. And whenever I go away on holiday and I see a place that looks a bit sort of dilapidated and sort of falling apart. I'm then like, I could write a story about that. And I proved the point to a friend of mine. She owns a snack van in a plumber's merchant. And we were talking about what I was going to do with my ghost stories. And she said, how quick can you write a ghost story? And I said, well, matter of minutes. I can have the rough ideas in a matter of minutes. And she went, how'd you work that one out? So I turned around and looked at the building for the plumber's merchant. And I went, right. I said, a man has a business doing plumbing. The business starts running at hard times and he can't afford to keep it running and gets into big debts. Another man buys the business. Then the other guy just disappears. No one knows where he's gone. No one can contact him. The guy that has now brought the business goes into the plumber's merchants, is looking for certain taps, and he walks past this strange guy, asks him for directions, and he points him to a darkened area of the warehouse where he finds the body of the previous guy.
Wow.
Turns out to be the ghost he talked to. He had actually spoken to the ghost when he walked into the plumber's merchant. So it was this. He's talked to the ghost. The ghost has told him where to go, and then found out that the ghost was the guy that's dead in amongst all this darkened area, and it was warning him that's where he was. That's where the body would be found, and it ended up being a spookinori called The Plumber.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it literally all just came about within 5-10 minutes. It was there. And when I get the ideas, I write the notes down. I'm going to have to move indoors because my phone's going to die in a second.
Bless you.
It's going to go. It's going to go. Hang on. Yeah. Stopped it. There we go. I'll have to stand at my back door now. So yeah, within 5 or 10 minutes, I've had to have everything all written down on note paper or in a note on the phone, so that I know exactly my key points of the story. And then I can then sit back and I can actually get onto the laptop and actually write it out properly.
That's absolutely awesome. So how do you suggest that what people do when they write a book then? Do they do something like that?
Well, I think I mean, for me, it's been easy because I'm able to remember my dreams. Okay. So the majority of the dreams I have, if I wanted to, I could use them to write my spookinauries. The problem is some of them are so far out there that they couldn't be published. But some of the good ones, straight away I've got a notepad by the side of the bed. So if I wake up in the morning and I think, wow, that was a good dream, I write as many of the notes as I can remember out onto the notepad. And that then goes to one side ready in case I need to write another spookinaury. But the majority of the time, I'll write the notes, put them to one side, and then forget about them.
All right. And just find them.
I think I've got one. I think I have actually got one in my wallet here that I wrote when I was out on a job in my coach. And I was taking some children to an old people's home to sing Christmas carols. And while I was sitting outside in the coach waiting for the children to come back out, I wrote a ghost story about an old people's home that was haunted by an old resident.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So, and I think if people want to write stories, there's nothing to stop you. There's no law that says don't write a story, because it's only for people that are labelled as writers. If you want to write a story, you go for it. And now there's so many more and better chances and opportunities to actually get the books out there. When I first started to look down the road of publishing my books, I thought, well, if I'm not going to get a publisher, there's no point in me doing it. And it got me on I was feeling quite low about it until I spoke to this lady, and she said to me, go on KDP with Amazon, self-publish. It doesn't cost you anything. You get a cut of the profits. And luckily I'm due for my payout this month. It's not a great deal. It's not a great deal. And I'm not that excited about it. it's not thousands or hundreds of pounds, but for me, it's a start, and I'm happy writing them, and I'm happy that people are buying them to read and enjoy them. So that to me is better than the money that I'll be getting from Amazon. The fact that people are enjoying the books, and that's why I'll keep writing them.
Yeah, it's an achievement to do something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, because my mum was always telling me you should publish the books, and I'm like, no, I don't think they'll go that well. I don't think they'll sell to many people. And she said, well, if you self-publish them through Kindle, what are you going to lose? It hasn't cost you anything to do it.
Yeah.
So it was thankfully it was my mum that sort of urged me into doing it. And if it hadn't have been for her, they still wouldn't have been published.
Wow. That's amazing. Nick likes your shirt.
Thank you, Nick.
Go well with the spooky stories.
This is actually my Spookanori.
Yeah.
It's my Spookanori top. Whenever I do a live Spookanori broadcast, I always wear this top. So this has become my my Spookanori top. Let's get it right there.
Sorry, chills through Sue as well. So yeah, the story really went down well. Yeah, Annalise wants a book set. So yeah, they're available on Amazon. So we'll post a link later.
Yes, I know Annalise, so if she wants to private message me after the live feed, I can always sort something out and get a signed book sent to her. I don't charge any extra, just the postage and packaging. So
yeah, I know Annalise as well. Bless. Yeah. We were chatting.
Yeah, I mean, I've had. I mean, obviously, when I first started advertising the fact that I was publishing the books, there was a sudden surge of people going straight to Amazon, and I'm like, Amazon are saying that I can actually purchase the books myself and sell them myself. They've given me the right in the contract. So I'm like, well, I can sell signed copies. So then I started advertising that I could sell copies for myself as well. And next minute I knew I was out. I'm like, I'm going to have to order some more.
That's fantastic.
So, and that I think has been the biggest pleasure is the fact that there are more and more people that are actually enjoying to read them. I'm extra specially proud that the first person that actually brought a copy was Justin Spurrier from Ghost Adventurers.
Oh wow!
He's one of their tech managers.
That is so cool.
And so, of course, every now and then I talk to him through Facebook when he does one of his little drives whenever they're going to location. And he brought the first ever ebook in America. So I was quite proud of that. And he said, Zach Bagans is going to be having a look when I've finished. And I said, well, no, don't let him read it. Get him to buy one.
Yeah, that's right. I did get a question earlier about what you think of the evidence from Ghost Adventures.
I think the problem is with a lot of the shows. A lot of the shows are put under pressure by the TV stations to actually have something. And I always ask the question, and I've sort of called this out on various people, including people that are sort of currently not on TV, and they can't answer the question. And it's things like when they turn around and they say we've got so many episodes that are on the shelf because nothing happened. And I'm thinking, but if you use a digital camera, that would be memory cards. So why don't you just erase the memory cards and record over them if not?
Yeah, that's it. Right.
That's it. So
Wayne might have to go to the garden again, having problems with the internet.
Sorry, a second. Ellen, can you get the extension cable out from underneath there, and I can take the cord out into the garden, can't I?
Slight technical issue will be sorted out in a minute. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah, my house is like a Faraday cage. There we go.
I want to thank you for watching, Jonathan Moss, Calvin Davis, Annalise.
Oh.
Thanks for watching, Diana. You might have gone now, but thank you. If you've got any questions, we've got about 10 minutes left, so you want to add them to the chat, that would be amazing.
There we go. I'm back out in the garden again.
All right, it's back out then. We might actually catch the internet. Hi, Stacey. Thanks for watching us. If you have any questions, Wayne, we've got about 9 minutes left. If that's
that's fine.
Right. You're actually involved in charity work as well, aren't you? So, trying to raise funds.
Yes. What I tend to do, what I've been doing for the last few years, I've been raising money for Macmillan nurses by doing Brave the Shave. Right. But this year, I tried to do an auction for Help for Heroes, and that was auctioning off one of the first book, A Whistle from the Hills. We managed to do the auction and raised £55 and an extra £10 on top from another donor. So we had £65 in total, but the lady that won the auction has become seriously ill. So we had to sort of discuss between us what course of action we were going to do. And she was happy to allow the auction to go ahead again. So we're going to redo the auction in 2 weeks' time on the 2nd of October. And I'm going to be sending her a copy of the book anyway, because she was sort of quite happy that she was going to actually get her hands on a copy. So I'm just going to send her a copy anyway, and then we're going to do the auction again, but this time it will be for a copy of A Whistle from the Hills and Lady J, simply because, you know, the Help for Heroes centre near us for a rehabilitation has had to close, and they don't see it reopening very soon. So they've said that due to the lack of money, they need the help. So I thought, right. So we got into contact with them, and they were quite happy to do the auction with us. So,
wow, bless you. Are you doing that through your Spookanori page?
Yes, it's on I'll do the live auction on the Spookanori group. So if anybody wants to, there is a Spookanori page and a Spookanori group. The page itself, I try to urge people not to do that one anymore, because the group sort of evolved from the page, and the page is a lot harder to maintain than the group for me. So I tend to sort of send people to the group rather than the page, because the page you just like and that's it. Whereas the group, the interaction's a lot easier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I tend to run, well, pages and groups, but yeah, pages are a bit awkward, aren't they?
Yeah. You have to, I think, especially when you do a lot of things through mobile or an iPad, you have to have the page manager app on there as well. And of course, that then sort of causes issues with how much you can do. And I'm just like, no, I'd just rather do everything through the main groups rather than pages.
Yeah, I will actually share a link onto this group later on, this page actually later on, so you can join that group. It gets complicated, doesn't it?
You're more than welcome to join us. You just put in the application, and that'll either be myself or my partner Ellen will accept you into the group.
And then, of course, you'll find out about all the other books.
Indeed.
Another question from Annalise. What's your next book?
Okay, now my next book has been inspired from my latest holiday. 3 weeks ago, I returned from my second home in Corfu, and gave me the inspiration for my next book called Cricket. Wow. About a family about a family that goes on holiday with a bit of a surprise in store for them. Um, so it's and it'll be centered around obviously cricket and a little boy.
Right. Okay.
And it's going to be quite a spooky one.
Okay. So when we got to watch out for that one then?
That one I'm hoping I'll be ready by Halloween.
Okay then. So if you want a spooky story for Halloween, then watch out for Wayne.
Cricket will be the one to look out for on Halloween, but obviously Lady J and A Whistle from the Hills as well. They'll do just as much. So a Lady J is probably the one I'm most proud of at the moment.
Well,
apart from one that is due to come out, the one after cricket that will be coming out is called The Journey Home, and that is dedicated to RAF Bomber Command. That will be is going to be released as well.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So, anyone got any last minute questions? We've only got a couple of minutes left. I want to thank you for joining us tonight, Wayne. It's
You're
been
welcome.
really interesting and amazing. I will put a link or you can after the show, so people can find your group. I'm glad you've enjoyed it, Tony Caulfield. Nice show, guys. If you want to like the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre page as well, if you haven't already, that would be amazing. If you like the show, if you want to share it, that'd be good. Yeah, it sounds amazing, Van, doesn't it? I'm definitely going to buy a set of books now. That's it.
Problem is people have said to me, how many books are you going to be writing? And I said, well, at the moment, I have already got 20 books ready to be published.
Wow.
So while I'm waiting for those to be, for the right time for them to all be published, I can be writing the next lot. And that's why I called it part of the Spookinori series.
Excellent.
Because it's going to be ongoing. And so while those 20 are being released staggered, then the next lot are ready to be written, so that when that lot finish, the next lot are ready to go.
That's cool. That's absolutely awesome. Hi, Phil Newton. Thanks for joining us. He's one of my para friends to sort of go out and about. There is a question though. I'll ask it. Did you learn anything from Most Haunted?
Yeah. Not
finishing the show now.
Have I learned anything from Most Haunted? Trusting the right people.
Right.
That is the biggest. That is the biggest thing. Trusting the right people.
Yeah, paranormal is a strange world, and you come in touch with a lot of people, and I think you build strong links with people quickly as well.
Yeah, I mean, because of Most Haunted, I won't slate them on that side of things. Because of Most Haunted, I have made a lot of friends in the paranormal field. However, since walking away from Most Haunted, I have made more friends than I did than when I was working with them.
That's great.
And because of Spookinori and what I do away from all of that, I've gained more friends, and I've gained more respect from people that I probably wouldn't have got had I have stuck around with them. Yeah. And I think it's probably the biggest reason was the fact that I couldn't trust what they were doing anymore, and I wasn't happy with quite possibly the fact that I could have been labelled in the same way, and I didn't want that. I prefer the honesty, so that's why.
I want to thank you all. Anyway, you have been absolutely awesome, and good luck with your books, and good luck with the charity auction as well. I will post a link to the group on here. Thanks everyone for watching, and good night. There's Jane and Neil are on the show next, so if you look out for that on the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre page. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.